Okay, so I guess this is going to be my first audio journal. I just don't know what I want it to be about. 'Cause what I've seen of audio journals, or at least what I want my audio journal to do, is I want it to. Hold on. I want my audio journal to be able to clearly convey the ideas that I have running around in my head about the stories I have. My own stories, Beef and Reolia. Only reason I'm doing this is because, well, I don't really have a better option. It's not that I can't write this stuff down, it's just I can't keep up with my own thoughts. My head's always running at like a million miles a minute. Just to, just whenever I bring these things up in my head, in my thoughts. So I'm trying to think, where would be a good place to start? The characters? The setting? I haven't even named. There are so many things that don't have names yet, and I guess I'm kind of underprepared. This is just me thinking out loud, really. And I'm not too sure where to start. I don't know. I mean, I guess you can have characters, but you can't really have them without place. So, I guess I'll just start with the setting. I don't. It's. Hmm. How do I explain it? All right, let's try. Let's try this. Um. Okay. So if I'm going to do anything, hold on, I need to unbind this. Okay, there we go. All right. So let's see. How do I even? How do I put this into words? Let's see. Let's grab a pencil. Then that works. All right. So let's see. How do I explain it? That's a good question. How do I explain this? So the setting of the story. Actually, wait. What setting am I going? I have two main stories. I have. Hold on. I have. I have two main stories. I have. What the? I have beef and real. Both of these stories take in very separate universes. Need a bigger eraser. There we go. Beef takes in a sort of parallel world to Earth, and features, let's see, how many main characters? There are. Well, no, we're talking about the world, so we're not going to talk about characters right now. We're talking about characters. So there are not characters. Setting. Damn it. So the setting for Beef is a parallel world to. Well, parallel world to reality. So it basically takes on like an Earth copy. Um, there's not much to say about it. It's more of a drama, so there's not too much on the setting aspect. It's more inward of the characters themselves and the interactions between them. I'm not saying that Reolia isn't, but Reolia is more of a fantasy setting thing. Because there are, let's see, how many is that? 4? Yeah, I think it's 4. Yeah. So there are 4. What do you want to call them? Realms? Uh, Actually, no. There are 4 planes of existence. Well, no, planes of existence is like geometry. That's not what I want to say. So I guess I can say realms, but that's not what I'm going to call them. That's just a placeholder name. First, you have um, what's it called? It starts with a U. Universe. Universe. There's the universe where almost everyone resides. There's heaven, the better afterlife, quote unquote. Hell, the worse afterlife, quote unquote. And there's the amalgam. Alright. Let's see. I guess I should talk about. I can talk about all of these later. I suppose. When it comes to Reolia, I guess I'm going to focus on this one. I'm going to focus on the universe for now. Because the universe is where our main characters, Cypress and Ingrid, reside. Hold on, let me. There it is. These two. These two are the main characters of the story, Reolia. But that's not the important part right now. Now, the universe is where they reside. That's where the story is going to take place for a good chunk of it in the start. Well, that's probably what's going to happen. That's probably where they're going to be in most of the story anyway. Um, they'll probably visit these other places, but I'm not going to talk about them just yet. I'm going to talk about one specific thing right now. So the universe, again, is another parallel to ours, but there are some different changes. The universe has another realm. Well, actually, no, I can't really talk about the universe without talking about the amalgam, so I guess I'm going to be talking about these two. What? The difference between the universe and the amalgam is that they're the antitheses to each other. Think about it. Whatever happens in the universe, whatever happens in the universe has a reason to happen. It has a reason to be. It has a reason. There's always a reason for something happening, right? But when you think about it, everything kind of has a place. Sometimes it's tragic, sometimes it's wholesome, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, etc., etc. And everything, like I said, everything has a reason, so everything can be kind of expected. And there are definite places in the universe that don't really move around, I guess? No, that's not the word. The universe is consistent. That's what I mean to say. The universe is consistent. You can expect it to do. You can't really expect it. You can't really expect something to change just because. Well, no, you can't really expect something. What's the saying for that? I've forgotten. Yeah, if you do something over and over again, you're going to get the same result. That's what I mean to say. Basically, just like our universe, there's not much different. Other than the fact that it has another realm, the amalgam, which is its antithesis. Basically meaning anything that the universe isn't, the amalgam is. So like I said, how the universe is consistent, the amalgam is inconsistent. The universe is finite, the amalgam is infinite. Let's see. What else do I call it? The universe, or the amalgam. How do I put this? How do I say this? The universe has reasons. The universe has reasons and needs reasons for things to happen. The amalgam doesn't need any of that. The amalgam can do whatever the fuck it likes, really. Let's see. So, the universe and the amalgam are antitheses of each other, and they exist in almost the exact same space. No, they exist quote unquote next to each other. Think of it like. I'm trying to think. Oh, I know. For whoever watching, think of it like the God of War, the most recent one, as of right now. I think it's called God of War 4. I think it's called just God of War, but I think it's the fourth in the series. In the main series, anyway. There are, and spoilers for anyone listening, at a certain point in the game, you can travel to different realms. Like, what's one of them? Muspelheim, Jotunheim, Midgard. You can't travel to Asgard. I think that's locked the entire game. Alfheim, etc. There are 9 realms. But basically, what the idea is that they all exist in the exact same space, but they, I don't know how to say it. It's like they're on top of each other at the same time they're not. They exist in the same space. It's hard to think of because the way people think of things, two things can't exist in the exact same space. That's impossible. Trying to think. But if that's what I was, but if you can understand that they're basically on top of each other or in the same space as each other, but they somehow exist differently. I don't know how to say it, but if you understand that concept, That's how the universe and the amalgam are almost exactly. The universe is influenced by the amalgam. The amalgam is not influenced by the universe. Well, no. They can be influenced by one another, but the amalgam has an easier time doing it than the universe. They both can, but yeah. So, let's see. How do I explain what the amalgam is? Or what the amalgam can do. What the amalgam is responsible for. The amalgam is essentially it's essentially an infinite well of magic, I guess. And okay, think about our universe. How there's so much space between everything, and that there's very little matter and energy to go around. Like there are what was the word? There are light years between. There are light years between stars, right? They're light. I don't know why. This should not be taking me this long to think of, but whatever. There are light years between stars, right? Entire solar systems. There are light years between livable planets and etc. With the amalgam, that's not really the case. But there are places that are inhabitable in the universe. But in the amalgam, that's not true. Because in the amalgam, let's see, how do I say this? The amalgam is basically, like I said before, it is the antithesis to the universe. So everything is basically full. It's like one massive body, and there are no gaps in between. If there are any, they're very small and very few and far in between. Now, let's see. Why did I bring that up? Right. Fuck. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. How the amalgam influences the universe. Since they essentially exist in the same place, and since the amalgam is an entire body, well, the universe is more of a skeleton, I guess you could say. The amalgam is in every place that the universe is. And since the amalgam can influence the universe, all you have to do is to. Well, let me say this: the universe is relatively quiet in comparison to the amalgam. The universe doesn't really have any. Well, it does have chaotic things going on, obviously, yes, but there's chaos in very few places. There is chaos going everywhere, yes, but in comparison to the amalgam, it's nothing. Because that is essentially a lot of what the universe is. It is a lot of nothing. So it's very quiet, not too loud, not too chaotic. The amalgam is very chaotic. So much so that if you were to, let's say, rip a hole between the universe and the amalgam, not much would happen. But because the amalgam is so much more, not necessarily more, but so much stronger, it because it's so much stronger and chaotic, it can be, quite frankly, explosive. Where in the universe, let's say that you're in like an open field and everything's calm. There's nothing going around. There's nothing. It's just you, the field, and that's it. It's just you in the field. Air is blowing through your hair. You're just relaxing. If you were to try and pull a piece of the amalgam into like a piece of the amalgam by itself, the amalgam is like the amalgam is essentially a being of magic. It's like a realm just full of magic. Because again, it doesn't necessarily need a reason to happen, and it's infinite. So there's not really much you can. There's not much you can't do with it. But because it's so much, and because it's so chaotic, and because it is technically magic, if you tried to pull a piece of the amalgam through to the universe, you'd probably die because of the explosive force that you would be hit with. You and whatever else. I don't want to say it's like a nuclear bomb or anything, but if you tried to pull like a something about the size of a dime through, you'd probably have your entire body evaporated, or not evaporated, disintegrated. That's the word. Probably have your entire body disintegrated, and well, anything around you, I'd say maybe a good 50 feet diameter, or not diameter, radius, would probably be destroyed as well because of the chaotic force that you would be hit with. And one thing that the universe does in Reolia that is not comparable to our own is it does not like holes into other realms. It will actively try to close each one. So whenever you try to use magic from the amalgam, it's always going to try and stop you. It's always going to try and limit you from doing anything you need to, or anything you're trying to do. So let's say you're trying to use whatever magic you. Let's say you're just trying to use whatever magic you need at the time. The only way to do that is to try and make a filter through the only way to do that is to try and make a filter through the amalgam. Or yeah, try and make a filter from the border. It's trying to make a filter out of the border between the universe and the amalgam. And all right, hold on. Let me try and make this a visual thing because I know I'm having a hard time trying to say it. Okay. Let's say that this is the amalgam. Complete chaos. No one knows what's going on. There's absolutely no order here. It's just chaos. Okay. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, what I've already said is that it's just chaos. If you tried to pull a piece of this... No, that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is you'd have to make a filter between the border of the universe versus the amalgam. So whenever you try to open a... Like I said, whenever you try to open a portal and you're just trying to pull out the amalgam by itself, well, you kind of just get blown up in the face because there's so much here. Because since the amalgam is technically infinite, there are an infinite amount of magics you could use, right? Now, of course, if you were to get hit with quote-unquote infinity, you would probably die. But that's not always the case. The amalgam is infinite as a whole, but if you try to take a small piece of it, technically, yes, it is infinite, but you've only pulled a small piece. Actually, no, that's not a good way to put it. The amalgam is infinite in the way that it... How do I say it? The amalgam is infinite in the way that it has ever-expanding matter. While the universe expands in nothingness, the amalgam expands with something out of nothing. So it is theoretically infinite. Now it is technically finite, but because it's expanding infinitely, you could essentially have infinity within it. So if you try to pull a piece off of it without filtering it, you're going to get hit with every kind of magic that you try to pull with it, and most magics don't really agree with each other, and they explode. Well, yeah, no, most things just... It's not that there are things that don't agree with themselves, it's just that when you try to pull a little bit of everything together, it doesn't go well. But if you try to filter the things... not the things, the magic. If you filter it, you can get what you need out of it. By creating a block, you're essentially saying... When you create a filter, you're essentially saying, hey, I don't need all of this. I just need this one thing right here. And you get the magic that you need. Now, of course, a filter does... well, it limits how much you can pull out of it. It limits everything that you are going to pull. Well, yeah, it limits everything that you're going to pull because now it's not so chaotic. You're basically trying to control what you're getting out. That's what a filter does. When you use these filters, let's see. When you use these filters, well, no, I've already said it, really, haven't I? Yeah, no, that's a filter. That's all I can say. It's a filter made out of the border between the universe and the amalgam. But it's just these filters, this is obviously not the scale. These filters are microscopic. Like, you really don't need that big of a filter to get a lot out. The universe, or the amalgam has such a strong influence on the universe that you really don't need a lot. Let's say that you're just trying to... Let's say that you're trying to make a simple flame, right? Okay, let's try this. Let's say that you're trying to make a simple flame, and you just need this kind of magic right here. You got your filter. And you're just trying to make a quick flame. You really only need something. How big should I say? How big should I make these? In order to make a flame, let's say the size of your hand. Let's say you want to make a flame the size of your hand. Let's say we're trying to make a flame the same size as your hand. The amount you would need for it is not much at all. The filter, the size of the filter you would need is about, I don't know, how do I describe it? Because it's really fucking tiny. It's very fucking small. I'm not even talking like fingers or the size of your teeth, the size of... Actually, no. That's... The filter would have to be the width of a hair strand. Let's say that. It would have to be the width of a hair strand. And I'm not saying it has to be the length of a hair strand. I'm saying it has to be the width. That's how big of a filter you would need. So you can imagine the filter itself does not take much to create. Now, while trying to keep the filter and stopping the amalgam itself is not necessarily hard, but after a while you can't just keep spewing it out. It becomes taxing. Now, the only way you can summon, or the only way you can make a filter to summon any magic is by... Hold on, I'm looking for something. I'll find it later. The only way you can really do that is by, I'm trying to think. How do you do that? Right, it's a, battle of mind. Well, not a battle of mind. It's not really... I guess you could say it's a battle of mind. It uses the process of thinking. So I don't really know how to... I haven't really come up with a way to say it, but just for the time being, I'm just going to say that you're thinking. It's a lot of visualizing. It's a lot of understanding. You have to know what exactly it is that you want, and you have to know um, how you would like something to turn out. Because if you're not specific, it's quite literally going to blow up in your face. Now, if you are trying to pull out a certain kind of magic, it's going to be a lot less violent than if you had just tried to pull the amalgam on its own. Because you have essentially created a filter, yes, but you've only really created one filter, and that leaves a lot to the imagination. So what you're really doing is you're making a lot of filters to try and get this one thing out. And it can be really hard because you have to, and it's not necessarily hard, it's just very, very, very specific. Because when you say let's say that you're trying to think about a drop of water. Let's just say you need a drop of water. The amalgam doesn't know. Actually, no. Let's say you just need something cold to drink, right? Let's say that you're just trying to conjure up a quick thing of water. Now, without all these extra filters, you really don't know what's going to come out. Because yes, water can come out, but that doesn't mean it's going to. What could happen is it could give you something like, because let's say that you just need something like that, you're just thinking of a cold drink of water, right? But if you don't specify that, you're just saying a cold drink, it could give you a cold bit of anything, really. It could give you a cold, I'm trying to think. It could give you a cold amount of basically any fluid, which is not all that safe when you say it up. So yeah, I'm not gonna say what it can, Bruno, because I know that I know that the imagination is rather wild. It can essentially pull out anything. It can pull out anything but water. It'll probably pull out water, but it'll probably pull out a lot of other things with it, and probably pollute it, contaminate it, etc. So my thing is, well, my thing. So by not having these filters, you essentially leave yourself out to the open of possibility of what technically falls under what falls under these categories, and then you basically just have a cold fluid pouring out because you didn't specify that you wanted cold water, cold H2O, precisely. And now you're covered in or drinking whatever polluted, contaminated drink that you were trying to create. And that can cause some serious problems. So, let's see. Hold on, let me write this down. Okay. So, all that being said, it's clear that you need to be precise get, in order to create these filters, in order to have certain types of magic come out, and to have things just go the way you want it to. There's a certain amount of control there's a certain amount of control that you need. But you might ask, how do you create these filters? Like I said before, I haven't really come up with or like I said before, there hasn't really been a clear-cut way of doing this just yet. So I'm not too sure. I'm still in the heavy brainstorming. Like, I've gotten things written down, but they're not really. They're more excerpts. They're not really world building. They're not settings. They're not places. Now, I do have like a few places in mind, but I don't know what the hell am I supposed to call the world that my main character is going to live on, or any character is going to live on. I have a few in mind, but I don't have any names for them. But that's going to be another problem for another day. That's not what I'm worried about right now. What I'm worried about is me explaining the amount. So how do you get these filters? Well, like I said, you basically just think about it. Now, the universe has a hard time responding to thoughts because thoughts are almost nothing. When you're thinking things, no one else can really hear them but you. Now, of course, whenever you do something, your intentions, the thoughts behind them can usually be seen. Actions speak louder than words. But it's usually the actions that are shown, not the thoughts, really. You can't be arrested for having thoughts. You can't. Well, I don't know. Why did I bring that into that? Well, because thinking is so subjective, and thinking is a no, not thinking. Consciousness. Consciousness is what I want to say. It takes a great deal of consciousness to open these filters, and I'm getting off track. Okay, hold up. That's how I spell it, right? Conscience. Yeah, conscience. Okay. Um. Fuck. What was I saying? What I was trying to say was, it takes a certain amount of conscience to open these filters. Like, yeah, because the universe doesn't really respond to conscious thought. It doesn't really. Conscience is a result of, what's it called? Hold on. Consciousness is a result of being more than the sum of your parts. What's that called? Consciousness is a sum of. No, it's more than the sum of your parts. That's what it's called. Right. So we know that it is a thing. We know that it is something that everyone has. Well, most people have. I'm just trying to think. How do I explain it? It's more. Consciousness is a result of being more than the sum of your parts. But how do I put it into words? How do I put what I'm trying to think of into words? I'm trying to think. Fuck, what's it called? Oh, I hate when this happens. I lose track of what I was thinking about. Right, the universe doesn't respond to conscious. It doesn't really respond to thoughts very much. Thoughts are essentially nothing. They're just things that you think. Oh, hi, JD Knight. Don't mind me. I'm just audio journaling. Kind of just speaking about well, I'm just speaking my mind about the universe that I have. Well, universes, but I'm going to be focusing on just one. Stay if you're. Well, stay if you want to hear. Stay or leave if you don't. Don't care. Just trying to get these ideas recorded. Anywho, so the universe doesn't really have a easy time. It responds more to action than it does to thoughts. Your thoughts do happen, yes, they do, but they don't really do anything physical. They can do now. They can do things to your mind, yes, and they can change your mind. They can change your chemistry. They can change your chemistry. There are things like placebo effects that make your body, that can make you sick, make you healthy, etc., etc. They can make you perform better, yada yada yada. But the universe only really responds to actions. Now, the amalgam does respond to these thoughts, however, and it responds to actions, but it responds to what you think more than what you do. You can make motions. You can make motions. You can make gestures, faces, expressions. You can build things. You can destroy things. It doesn't really respond to. It won't really respond to those though. That doesn't really do anything. You have to think about what you're doing. The amalgam will respond to your thoughts. And when you do that, and when you do start thinking about it, the amalgam will try. If you try to summon the amalgam into the universe, or you try to pull some magic through, you have to think about it in order for it to happen. And it's not necessarily hard, but it's like constantly flexing a muscle. Eventually, you're going to get tired of doing it, and just like it is a muscle, you need to how do I say it? You need to train it in order to be able to do it in the first place. It's not that easy. It takes a lot of thinking power and a lot of thinking, not necessarily prowess, but it takes peace of mind to get what you need specifically. like I was saying before, you need to have certain filters, and you need to be able to have a lot of them in order to get exactly what you want. So let's see. So in order to pull the amalgam through, you need to have peace of mind, yada yada. You need to be able to pull out certain parts. The amalgam can only be pulled through because the amalgam will try to force itself through the the amalgam has the ability to thin out the border between itself and the universe, and the better or the more skilled you are at thinking about it, the easier it is the easier it will bend to your thoughts. So let's see what's next after that. Uh, trying to think what comes next. Because I've answered what the amalgam is. I've answered what it can do, how it responds to your thoughts, how it is the antithesis to the universe. Hmm. What would be the next thing to answer? Damn, that's a good question. I gotta stop losing my thought process like this. I had to stop losing my train of thought. Uh, hmm. Have I already said everything? I mean, yeah, I've talked about how actions don't really do much. I've talked about how it responds to your thoughts, how you can do these things the better you think about it. Yeah, I think I've said a lot of. Yeah, I think I have said a lot of what I needed to. How it was like a muscle that you needed to constantly flex, yada yada. Um, fuck. Well, now what do I say? Oh yeah, I can't talk about the amalgam, which is essentially magic, without mentioning magic itself and how it works. So, whenever you use the amalgam, whenever you use the amalgam's processes or abilities, what you're essentially doing is you're breaking the laws of the universe. Now, the universe has a unique quality in that it can only ever be itself. And by that I mean, let's say that you manage to pull some very basic water through the filters that you made for it. But now let's say you don't need that water anymore. Um, well, what's going to happen? I mean, you can't just let it sit on the floor. I mean, if everybody did that, then whatever planet they were on is probably going to flood. Well, the universe has a fix for that. The universe has this thing where, like I said, it can't be anything more or less than itself. So what it'll do is it will correct itself. And what I mean by it'll correct itself is it will literally dissipate anything that was pulled in by magic. So eventually, let's say that you're done with the water and you leave a puddle now, and you have a small puddle. Well, this will eventually dissipate. It will return to the nothing. It'll return to the nothingness that it originally became, or that it came from. Now, this leaves the universe with a few unique properties, however. Now, one thing the universe can't change is the past. It can't go back in time, it can only go forward, right? Right. So, essentially, what happens is even though the water has, or yeah, your hypothetical water has dissipated, that doesn't mean it didn't. Actually, no, let me just. Let's say that there's a tree on fire, and you have to put it out with some water, right? That's what you're supposed to do. And let's say you douse the water. So the water will be doused, but you pulled this water from nothing. But that doesn't mean that it didn't put out the uh, the fire. It'll still put out the fire. It's water, of course it will. But now that it will, but now that it, let's say that it has put out the fire. Hold on. Now you've put out the fire, right? But the water has to dissipate. Does that mean that the fire is going to return simply because the water dissipated? No, it's already happened, and the universe can't just go back in the past and try to correct that. It can't just erase what happened. So fixes. This essentially means that if you only need it for a split second, it's perfect because it'll just dissipate back into nothingness. And yeah, there's not much else that will happen. The fire's put out, the water's gone, but it's already happened, and well, you've essentially saved the day, and there's no cleanup. You don't have to worry about the tree being soaked because the water will have dissipated. Now, this does create some problems where you can't really use the amalgam to nourish yourself or nourish anything really because it'll just fade back into nothing. Let's say you're thirsty, you try to get some water. Well, you can't really do that now. Why? Because it's not that it won't nourish you. It's just that in order for it to stay in your body, you have to constantly keep that water sustained by having the hole open between the universe and the amalgam. That's something else I should say. It won't dissipate until you completely close the gap, or not close the gap, until you close the portal between the amalgam and the universe. It won't start to dissipate until it's closed. So you can't really use it to nourish yourself. You can't really use it to do much of anything. You can't use it to create permanent solutions, or at least you can't make something permanently. You can only make it temporarily. However, like I said with the fire example, essentially you can still change things so that you can fix problems quickly without any cleanup, and well, yeah, I think this example just gives the best explanation of it. There's not much else I can really say. It does leave. Well, no, that's what I was saying. I was saying that it leaves problems temporary. It can fix things, but only really in the present. It can't fix them for long term unless you have a serious amount of control, or you have a serious amount of mental strength to hold that portal open, etc. I'm trying to think. How else can I put this? Because, like I said, it doesn't. The universe will not try to correct the past. That's not something it does. It can only go in the future. If it could go in the past, it would probably try to undo all of this, but it can't. So let's say you still need that. You still need that cup of water, right? Now you still need the water, but you can't really. Hold on. Now you still need a cup of water, right? And you're still thinking to be thirsty. Now let's say you have a cup of water that you got from the faucet or wherever, but now it's just lukewarm. and it's a hot day, you're just trying to get a quick drink. What you can do now, this is another example like the fire one with the fire in the tray. What you can do now that you have some water from the universe, it's not going to try and rectify it, so that you it's not going to try and rectify it because it came from the universe and it has to return to the universe, which is something else I should mention. But I'll talk about that later. Let's say that you need this to be, you want this to be cold. Something you can actually do is you can certainly summon cold air. And you can certainly summon things like dry. You can certainly summon things like ice, dry ice, packed ice, or anything that you can think of that's cold. Like, well, that's all I can really think of that is cold. Snow, maybe cold weather. I can't really think of much else. But you can use that to influence the water, and now the water itself is cold. Now the cold air still has to dissipate, but it still influenced the water. So now you have a cold cup of water, and there's nothing to clean up. The cold air has dissipated, but the water was still influenced, and now it's cold. And you essentially have a cold drink. So let's see. What was I going to say earlier? This brings up another thing. I've forgotten what it was. What was it I was thinking of? I can't remember. I gotta stop forgetting things like this. Fuck. Give me a second. I was talking about the fire and the cup, how you can't get water from the cup, how you can't get water. Oh, right. Let's say that you were to throw something from the universe into the amalgam, right? Because it came from the universe, it also has to return to the universe eventually. And what the universe will do is it will try to it won't try to the amalgam won't try to dissipate you. The amalgam can't do that. The universe can dissipate things that don't belong there, that shouldn't have been there in the first place. The universe can, however, pull things that were once that once came from it back to itself. So let's say that you throw a rock into the amalgam, right? Let's just take a rock. There we go, now you got yourself a sandy looking rock. Let's say that you throw the rock that was created in the universe or that is not necessarily created, but from the universe, and you try to throw it into the amalgam. Okay, so let's say that you throw the rock into the amalgam. It's from the universe, meaning it has to return to the universe. So eventually, what's going to happen is the universe is going to. The universe likes to be whole, and it doesn't like to be a part of the amalgam. Um, and it likes to have all its pieces where they belong. So, essentially, you throw the rock in, the universe is going to try its damnedest to pull it back out, and the universe is pretty damn strong, so it's going to pull that rock back out. And, well, that's really the only way I can put it. Because it came from the universe, it has to return to the universe. Because things come from nothing, they have to return to nothing. Because things come from the amalgam, they have to return to the amalgam. Basically, what I'm trying to say. Okay. So, this obviously does create a few unique things as well. Or at least in my case, or not in my case, but in the case of it using the ability of mind, what it becomes is, let's say that you're trying to fight someone, right? And you're both using fire. Because everybody likes to use fire, right? It's dangerous, very easy to conjure, yada yada. But you're just trying to create a simple flame and you're trying to fight someone who's also using a flame. So, this is where the distinction between fire magic versus, hold on, need a center brush. Okay. magic. Fire. Now, I know that this sounds very confusing, but it's not all that confusing once I start to talk about it. Fire magic is what it sounds like. You're just making fire out of nothing. And it acts the way fire should. It does exactly everything fire does. It burns, it burns, it warms, it cooks, yada yada. You can use fire magic to cook. You can use fire magic to clean certain things. You can use it to burn, yada yada. But it acts like a normal flame. Now, in order to conjure this, all you have to do is just think about it. That's all you're doing. You're just thinking about fire and how much of it you want. Now, of course, you can adjust a few things like the. Well, no, if you're just thinking about like a, no, you can't really adjust it. You can think of how much fire you want. You can think of the amount of fire that you want. You can think of what kind of fire you want, because there are different kinds of fire. There are things like burning a. There are things like There are differences between burning wood, paper, a dollar bill. There are certain things that burn different colors. I know that, what was it? It was like copper that burns like a bright green. And there are things that burn bright yellow, red, yada yada, things of that nature. I think, I forget, is magnesium the one that burns white? I don't remember. But what you're just trying to do is just burn things normally. This is just a normal flame that's burning on oxygen. Your normal orange flame. Or not necessarily. It's not like burning on oxygen. It's like just like it's using oxygen as a fuel source along with whatever it is burning, and it's essentially coming from nothing. However, magic fire is a completely different thing. And it would be wise to not get them so confused. Magic fire is something that defies the laws of normal fire. This is just a normal flame. Fire magic is just creating normal flames. Magic fire is creating magic flames. The difference being, like I said, I've already explained everything with the fire magic. The magic fire is something that forces its rules onto things that normally shouldn't behave in certain ways. Like fire versus water. What you would expect it to do is you would expect it to you would expect the fire to lose the fight because it water always puts out fire. It doesn't help fire in any way, shape, or form. Now let's say that now when it comes to things like wind, because if you fan the flames, well, yeah, you're just giving the fire more fuel in that case. But whenever a magic flame comes in contact to water, it's not going to just evaporate. No. What it's going to do instead is it's going to burn the water, which I know sounds weird. But because fire burns, and you're using the magic to enforce the rules, or you're using it to enforce its own rules on things that it normally shouldn't be. Actually, hold on. Let me try to reword that. What you are essentially doing is you're using the amalgam itself to fuel these rules, or you're using the amalgam itself to force the rules of the flames onto anything, and it becomes resistant to things that would normally counter it, like water. Like I said, it would burn the water rather than be put out by it. It would, if you try to deprive it of oxygen, it's going to burn anyway. If you try to deprive it of a fuel source, it's going to burn anyway. Now, if it was going to do something that would help it rather than harm it, it's just going to do it in a much better fashion. Let's say that you've got like gasoline, right, and you just light a normal flame and it explodes, right? If you use a magic flame, it's going to explode much more violently, much more, with a lot more force, strength, power, because the rules are being so heavily enforced that they can be overdone, is what I mean to say. Now, this creates some very unique... This can create some very unique materials, like burned water. There's no such thing in reality as burned water. That's just gas. That's just steam, or the clouds above, or water vapor, humidity, etc. But you know what I mean. What it essentially means is you can create new things that are technically impossible, but because you were able to change them, like I did with the cup and the fire examples, you can essentially create something new that was influenced by the amalgam, but because it was created in the universe, it will stay. It was influenced by the amalgam, but it will stay. Because the universe can't go back in the past, and the influence has already taken its toll. So when you have something like burned water, you can create a whole slew of new things by forcing the rules onto them. Now, I know there are like a million things I could say, but I've only thought of like this one example. But yeah, you can change the way things truly are, and you can essentially create new elements that are still the same. Like if you were to look at it, under a microscope, it would still be H2O. But it's H2O that hasn't existed in any a burned state, is what I mean to say. Because water, you can't really burn water. You can, you can't really burn water. What you can do is you can evaporate it, you can freeze it, you can liquefy it, but you can't really burn it. You can heat it up, but that's just about it. It doesn't burn, so you can create new things that technically shouldn't exist, but do anyway. And, well, that's really just it. It's a magic flame. It can make things using the influence of magic, and then once it dissipates, its effect still persists. Its change still persists. So, I hope that was clear. I think there's one more thing I wanted to say about the amalgam, but I don't remember what it was. Hold on. Let me just do that other example. Oh yeah. Okay. So after explaining all of this, once I jot this down, I will go on to my final point about the amalgam. Okay. So like I was mentioning before, you need to have a strong conscience, a clear conscience, to be able to pull things through the amalgam, right? And in order to do things like in order to use things like magic flames, not flame magic, um, what you're essentially doing is you're using the amalgam to fuel the fire, right? It's burning off of the amalgam, and um, and what it essentially means is, in order to fight someone, in order to fight someone with that's using magic fire, you also have to use. You don't have to use magic fire, but let's say you're using magic water that only that enforces its rules. Now, the only reason you would use magic fire is because it's going to burn the water rather than just be evaporated by it, right? Now, if you use magic water, the magic water is going to try and enforce its rules as well. So essentially, you're still at a stalemate. But whenever you use magic elements, it, the better they perform is based on how much of the amalgam you're able to give them to fuel themselves. Okay, so you have these two fighting, right? This is magic water, and this is magic fire. And they essentially create a stalemate because they're essentially doing the exact same thing normal water and normal fire have done, but now it's just now there's just magic being poured into it and it's really just going to waste, right? Wrong. Here's how you would fight someone using either the well, here's how you fight them. It stops becoming bleh. Here's what the bleh. What's the terminology for this? Trying to think. So here's the difference between magic elements and normal elements. Normal elements follow the rules no matter what. Magic elements try to enforce their rules, right? Now the strength of how well they're enforced depends on how much of the amalgam is being poured into them, how much is being poured into them and fueling them, right? And what the amalgam bases itself on is how well or how skilled you are at thinking about it. How strong your thoughts are. The stronger your thoughts, the better you are at pulling the amalgam through the amalgam through into the universe. And so what it essentially becomes is it stops being a battle of the battle of the body. It becomes a battle of the mind, because we're not talking about the body of fire anymore. We're talking about what the fire is. We're talking about what the fire is trying to do. We're talking about what you're trying to do with the fire or the water. So how do I... let's see, hold on. So the only way to really win this fight is to be able to pour more of the amalgam into itself. But if the level of or the amount of amalgam that you're using is practically equal to one another, hold on. Basically the amount of amalgam that you're trying to pour into the element that you're trying to use to fight, if they're equal, you're better off just using normal elements in this case, because if you're just using magic, you're just exhausting yourself faster. There's no point in doing this. But if you have the greater amount, you're going to win. You have the lesser amount, you're going to lose, and vice versa. So let's say this. Magic fire is going to burn anything it comes into contact with. Magic water is going to douse anything that it also comes into contact with. Meaning that you can create a doused flame. Or no, you can create wet fire. It sounds stupid. It sounds stupid when I say it out loud, but you can create a wet flame, which sounds it sounds dumb when you say it out loud. You can create burned water, which also sounds dumb when you say it out loud. But because you're using the amalgam to enforce the rules on these elements that are normal, you've influenced them you've influenced them basically. You've created elements that are technically impossible. You've created wet flames and you've created burned water. That's all I can really say. Um, but going back to this and how it is a battle of the mind versus the body. Because when you're thinking of using the amalgam to just create flames, like normal flames, that is just a battle of body. That's just a battle of how big you can get the flames to be versus how big you can get the water to be. But when it becomes a battle of mind when you're trying to, depending on how well you're trying to enforce the rules of either element, basically. And the better you are at enforcing them, the better chance you have at pulling more of the amalgam through and therefore winning. And I think that's basically everything I can say about the amalgam. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Hold on, let me just write this down. And that's basically the amalgam. That's a lot of what you can do with it. So I guess I'm just going to go back over, do a quick summary again. Okay, so let's see. So in Reolia, there are four realms. There's the universe, heaven, hell, and the amalgam. We're not going to talk about heaven and hell. We're just going to talk about the universe. We're going to touch on the universe. We're just going to go straight into the amalgam. The amalgam is essentially the antithesis to the universe. The universe being very quiet, very calm. Of course, there's chaos everywhere. If you were to just go to a black hole, that's probably going to be one of the most chaotic things you could possibly do, or a star. But there are light years between them, so it's really very few and far in between. There's a lot of nothingness in between those two spaces. Like, you have a star that's infinitesimally small in comparison to the rest of the universe, and these sources of matter and energy are just so few and far between that there's really nothing much. The universe is essentially a lot of nothing with very little substance. The amalgam is the very opposite of that. It is a lot of everything with very little amounts of nothing, with very little pockets and with very few pockets of nothingness in it at all. And it's very chaotic. It's very chaotic. It's very unruly. It's ruthless, and it's very. And if you were to try to pull it into the, if you were to try to pull it into the universe, it would basically explode in your face. Because if you don't put any filters, if you're just trying to pull the amalgam, it's going to explode in your face because all of the elements are trying to hit you at once, are trying to be pulled out at once, and they can't really squeeze like that. And some are more violent than others, and some don't react very well. And you've essentially got a bomb just waiting to happen, and it blows up. That's it. That's all you can really have happen. And now, whenever you're trying to pull magic, you have to filter them, and you have to be very specific. And there have to be several filters, because let's say you want something to drink, you want something cold to drink, and you're thinking of a liquid. Now, that liquid could be literally anything, as long as it's cold, meaning that it could be a lot of disgusting things. But you get the idea. If you're not very specific, if you just say you want a cold drink, it could be a cold drink of anything that is cold, that has a low what's it called? A low fluid. What? Like I forget what it's called. What is it called? Uh, something that liquefies at something that is liquid at room temperature. That's what I mean to say. If it's anything that's liquid at room temperature or slightly colder, depending on how cold you want it, it's going to come out at that temperature really. And well, there's not much you can really do. There's not much you can do about it. You could get like a cup of mud as long as it's cold enough, and that's not really what you want. But I rest my case. So yes, you need several filters, and you need to be very specific in order to pull something through the amalgam into the universe, and you need to have several filters. Now, the only thing is, you don't need these filters to be very big. They just have to be, in order to pull anything through. Like, let's say you want to flame the side of your hand. Um, you really only need a filter about the width of a hair strand. That's really all you need, and um, that's well, that's just all you need. That's it doesn't take much to create something substantial. However, the only way you're able to do that in the first place is if you have a strong conscience, which is essentially being more than the conscious mind is a result of being more than the sum of your parts. I forget what that's called. I forget what the process or the terminology is for that. It's one word, but I don't remember what it is. That's besides the point. So the universe itself does not respond to thoughts very well. It does not respond to thoughts very adamantly, very loudly, very quiet. It's very quiet about it. Almost nothing. It responds way better to actions. It responds to you moving. It responds to you punching someone. It responds to you a star colliding or whatever you want to say. It responds to things that are moving, basically. Um, so essentially, the amalgam, with it being the antithesis to the universe, it does not respond very well to actions. Let's say that you build a monument in respect to the amalgam. The amalgam's not going to recognize that. That was an action, not a thought. Is going, let's say that you try breaking something. The amalgam's not going to recognize that. Let's say you try fixing something. It's not going to recognize that. You're driving a car. It's not going to recognize that. It's going to recognize the thoughts behind it, or the thoughts at all. If you're trying to pull something through the amalgam, you have to think about it. Have to um, you don't have to move really, although moving can help you get in the state of mind of how to do things, but that's besides the point. What you can do is what you can do is just all you have to do is just really think about it, and you need to make sure that you think about it precisely. And whenever you are pulling something through the amalgam, it essentially you can you can essentially create anything by using the amalgam. You can create water from nothing, but the universe doesn't like being more or less than itself. It likes to be completely equal all the time. So what it's going to do is it's going to force that water to dissipate and become nothing. Because it came from nothing, it has to return to nothing. So the water, after you use it to, let's say, douse a fire, what it's going to do is it's going to douse the fire, yes, and then it's going to dissipate. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that the fire is just going to immediately come back? No. If the fire is put out, it's not going to come back. Um, now of course, once the water does dissipate, it is going to dry back up. So you could essentially have a very dry tree that needs to be taken care of, but the fire's out, and the immediate threat is gone, and there's no cleanup really. And because the universe only moves to the future, it stays in the present but moves to the future. It can't really go back and change things. So the fire will be put out, and that's it. There's no erasing what happened, which leaves you in these very strange situations. Actually, hold on, before I go into that. It can create these things like actually no, I'll go back to that. What it can do is like in the situation, it can leave its influences behind, like this one I just did with the cup. It you can summon in cold temperatures to, or something that is by default cold, like dry ice. If you try to summon cold itself, the cold has to return back into the amalgam. Hold on, let me actually write that down. Okay, so let's say that you pull in some cold air, right? Um, Essentially, the temperature from that, because you were just pulling the temperature from the, because you were essentially just pulling the temperature from the amalgam, it has to return. Meaning that if you try to use it to create a cold cup of water, the water is just going to return back to room temperature. However, there are ways to circumvent this by creating something such as dry ice, which has a cold influence around it, but it is in and of itself it is cold, but it is not cold itself. If you understand what I'm saying, so you can use it to create these. You can use it to create to influence the world around it to be cold. So you can like use it to cool down the water, and you can use it to cool down the water. What was I about to do? What was I about to say? You can use it to cool down the water, and the cold will not dissipate from the water because it was just because the universe was influenced by the magic. It wasn't. The cold was not directly pulled in by the magic itself. Now that brings me to another thing. Whenever you're trying to pull something from the amalgam, just as the universe likes to be whole, um, and it likes to and it always likes to be equal. It's going to let's say that you throw a rock into the amalgam, um, or let's say that you got a portal and you throw a rock into the amalgam, right? That rock has to come back because it came from the universe and it has to return to the universe. The universe likes being equal at all times. So what the universe is going to do, it's going to pull that rock back into itself, back to where it came from. And this doesn't really, it doesn't really create any problems. It doesn't really create anything new, but it can technically, let's say that it can technically tear open a hole. Let's say that you throw the rock, close a hole between the amalgam and the universe. The universe is going to reopen that hole, or reopen a new hole to get the rock back. It will certainly do that. Now moving on to the magic fire and fire magic argument. Or not argument, but comparisons and differences, comparing and contrast, Venn diagram. Fire magic is just using the amalgam to create normal flames that burn normally. But if, let's say, that you were to use some normal water, the flame would be put out immediately. Magic fire, however, would not be put out by the fire or be put out by normal water, because the water would have to follow its rules because it's using the amalgam to enforce them, which can lead to you being able to create new things that don't technically exist but can because they were influenced to. If you take a magic flame and you try to use it on normal water, it's going to create burned water, which doesn't normally exist. But because the magic flame existed at one point in time, it can burn the water and create burned water. And even though it is dissipated, like in the other example with the cup and the rock, or the cup and the tree, it's already happened and there is no undoing it. So you can still have this burned water. And you can have things like burned water. You can have things like wet flames and etc. Now, what that also leads to have happening is these fights that can happen between people. Let's say that you're using fire versus water. Now, whenever it comes to magic water and magic fire, or magic elements in general, it depends on how much of the amalgam you're able to put into the element that you're using to enforce its rules, to more strongly enforce its rules. So magic fire is going to burn normal water, and magic water is going to make normal flames wet. But if you try to use magic fire versus magic water, it depends on who's got more amalgam pouring into it. And like I said before, the better you are in tune with your conscience, and the better you are able to think about it, the better you are able to visualize, understand, etc. Whenever you're at peace of mind, the better it is to pull more and more of the amalgam and pour it into whatever element that you're trying to use to fight with. So it stops becoming a battle of body where you're trying to use the amalgam to just create a certain amount of flame or water or whatever element it is, and it becomes a battle of the mind, because it essentially means that you're not trying to create just mass amounts of flame, waters, or whatever element. It means that you're trying to create water that's trying to enforce its rules. You're trying to create something that is saying, hey, this is a flame, and you can't tell me not to be. I'm going to tell you that I am a flame. I am going to tell you that I am water, whatever element. And essentially creating a battle of mind, because now you have to see who can who has the better peace of mind that is going to be able to pour more of the amalgam into the elements. And whoever has more wins. Well, in a head-to-head situation anyways. But yeah, battle of body, more fire, more elements. Battle of mind, stronger elements that enforce rules, basically. What happens when one is overpowered by the other? Well, it just really creates. Let's just say that in relation to, let's say that you have the water that has more magic than the fire. What it essentially does is it just acts as if the fire was normal, because now the amount of amalgam has canceled out, but there's still leftover amalgam in the magic water, so it just makes the flame wet, really. By canceling the other out. But let's say the fire was one who won, it would make burned water, because now that the amalgam is canceled out, but there's leftover amalgam in the flames, it's just going to act accordingly. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. one last thing. Let's say the amount of amalgam is a tie between the two. Then you're essentially just wasting. You're essentially just wasting effort. I want to say not effort. Well, it is like effort. Because it's like a muscle that you have to. Because whenever you're thinking about it, it is like a muscle that you have to use. Because you can't keep it flexed the entire time. So what you're essentially doing is just wasting time and energy into something that could be a bit more useful, a bit more less wasteful. And I think that's it. I think that's the summary of everything I wanted to cover, or at least when it came to the amount. This is just one of. Oh god, that's a mess. This is just one of the 4 realms that exist in Reolia. And so the amalgam is essentially just magic. Because it's the antithesis to the universe, which is logic and reason and basically stand still, nothing changes. Amalgam is everything changes, everything's inconsistent, everything happens at once, it's super chaotic, etc. And I think that's my. Okay, sorry about that. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Took me about 2 hours, but that is essentially everything that I wanted to cover for today. I started doing this because I realized that I wanted to be able to get into my stories and be able to write down these things, but I realized that not that I suck at writing, I just can't keep up my writing with my thought processes, and it becomes aggravatingly slow, and I start to forget things, and I start to get frustrated and bored, and it just and like I try to sit down and record these, or I try to sit down and write these things down, but my head's moving so much faster than what I'm trying to do. My head's moving so much faster than I'm able to write, and it's just torture at that point. So what I essentially am trying to do is just have these ideas in a way that I can record them and keep up with my thinking, so much so that I don't have to be bored by it, and I don't have to be and I don't have to and I'm not forced to be slowed down. So I guess this is going to be a sort of one of many. I guess I'll try doing this I guess I'll try doing this again. I don't really see a reason not to. But this is just me, basically world building, kind of. Because, well, I just wanted to get these ideas down, but I didn't want to write them. So I figured, okay, why not just speak them? I can record them. I have recording software. I have streaming software too. So I figured, okay, I can just do 2 things, and now this could probably. And I also needed a new hobby other than just drawing, because I'd given up on video games because they were just way too not necessarily boring, but it was just so mindless at one point. Of course, there are things I could have done with it, but I didn't feel like putting any more effort into it. It had already, not to say it had taken anything from my life or anything as dramatic as that, but it was just something I didn't feel like I knew I was going to get super heavily into. I knew that I wanted to get into storytelling and writing and art and animation. Video games was just something that I realized I didn't have any fun with anymore. It wasn't something I wanted to do with my life. So I guess I'm just doing art and what's this called? Audio journal? Yeah, audio journaling now. I need a new hobby, so I guess this is going to have to be it. I'll see if I can keep up with this. I don't really think I'm going to have like a consistent schedule, but I am definitely going to record whenever I'm definitely going to record what day I start, and when I start, like what time specifically, what time of day. But yeah, I think that's it. Um, I don't want to cover too much more of anything else because then I'm going to go. It's already been 2 hours. I need to take a break. It's like 1:30 at night. I need to sleep. Um, I think I'm going to. I think I'll try doing this tomorrow. Um, I have the recording, so I might be able to like put this up onto YouTube or something. But in any case, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off for right now. I don't really have much else to say. I don't want to go into anything else. I don't want to do anything else right now because I've already reached like what 2.5 or no, just 2 hours. Um, yeah, that's it. Now I just have to think. Before I do sign off, I need to think. What else should I cover? I'm trying to think. What would be a good thing to cover? Hold on. Because I know the settings are. I've already talked about the universe and I've already talked about the Amalgam. I don't want to talk about heaven and hell yet because it gives away a lot about some characters. I don't want to. I don't want to spoil anything just yet. So I think now that I've got like a setting, well, I got a basic setting of one of the realms. I still need to talk about the place where my main characters live. I just need to figure out what to call it, really. The planet that they live on, the place that they live, what it looks like, yada yada. But yeah, that's something I need to figure out tomorrow or another day, whenever. But in any case, alright, I'm going to. I'll sign off for real this time. Thanks for whoever watched, whoever listened. I guess it's just me just pouring my thoughts out on the page. This is just my first audio journal. I'll see if I can keep this up as a new hobby.